which for this satsang program, and where Maharaj will be talking about how merciful Lord Narsimha Dev is. So before that, we will talk a little bit about Maharaj. Maharaj was born on the Pacific island of Goma in 1948, and he grew up under the in the sunshine in an open space of Arizona and California. And when I was reading that, I was really thinking how fortunate Maharaj is, because right now you see a lot of blogs, or a lot of articles that it's so hard. People are so busy that we don't see the open sky anymore, whether it's during the days or during the nights. And the nature is so beautiful, especially in the nights, and we just sit in our car, get the car out of the garage, and we are in the work and under a roof where we don't see anything except all this gadgets and everything. So it has become such a you know what can you call it, like with this busy schedule, that you don't even have time to look at the nature. When I was reading it, I was very, very happy that wow, such a Maharaj had such a beautiful thing, that all his life he was under the sky in an open. So that was very wonderful. Then Maharaj was graduated in psychology from University of California in 1970, being initiated by his AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada in 1974. Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Then he was later awarded a sannyas by Bhakti Siddhant Damodar Swami Maharaj in ISKCON Manipur, by Bhaktivedanta Institute, and went to make his own humble contribution to academic and institutional growth of Sri Lord Chaitanya's mission of Sankirtan movement at universities, cultures, and centers all around the world, all around the ISKCON centers in the world. And today Maharaj is here with Harilila Prabhu in Houston, and through this Zoom platform, all over many states, and many people have joined from India too. And people have all the devotees have joined, and it will be our fortunate to hear from Maharaj, because Maharaj is very, very merciful, and he's going to be talking about the most merciful Narsingadev Bhagwan. So two mercies will be combined. So there's going to be a mercy showering today through the Zoom platform. Maharaj, please welcome. You're welcome, and thank you very much. If I have spoken, please something that unwanted, please forgive me, but bless me too. And I'm very, very fortunate that I had an opportunity to introduce you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Guru.
Thank you, Prabhu. Is our image okay? Can you see our PowerPoint show?
At this point, yes, Prabhuji, there is a PowerPoint screen is viewable.
Okay. Mukam karoti vachalam pangun langayate kerim yakripa tamaham vande Sri Gurun Dinatarinam. By the mercy of the spiritual master, a lame person is sent to cross over mountains. A speech impaired person can recite poetry. A blind man can see the stars in the sky. And a dog can fly on Southwest Airlines. And here we are, arrived. Tomorrow night is Nishingadev. We hope. And Lord Nishingadev will be showering his mercy by throwing Hiranyakasipu's intestines all over the universe like that. But tonight we're talking about Jayananda. And this is a very, very, very nice verse we have on the screen here. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-21. So I'll chant, and you can all repeat in your ashrams with your microphones closed. Otherwise we'll have big chaos. And Harilila and Mataji, they can repeat here. Tatekshava karunikaha. Tatikshava karunikaha. Suhrida sarva dehinam. Suhrida sarva dayainam. Ajata shatrava shantaha. Ajata Kshatrava Santaha Sadhava Sadhubhushanaha. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, titikshava, merciful, karunaka, and friendly to all living entities. Suhridha sarvadehinam. He has no enemies. Ajata satravaha. He is peaceful. Shantaha. He abides by the scriptures. Okay, sadhu. Yeah. And all of his characteristics are sublime. Sadhava, sadhava, sadhubhushana. And then the next text Prabhupada will say, especially he is a devotee of Krishna. And this is Lord Kapila Dev talking to his mother. Very, very wonderful, Leela of and Mataji Devahuti says, I'm such a unfortunate person. I can't understand what's happening, even though I have the good association of a husband like Kardama Muni. So please enlighten me about spiritual life. And then Kapila gives very, 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 very nice description of what is devotional service, what is this world, how do we pass through this world. Wonderful, wonderful, we call it education, preaching by Kapila. The Bhagavatam is so unlimited, we can go on studying it for a long time. Vrindavan Das Thakur, he's the Acharya on Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And he said, my only desire is to study Srimad Bhagavatam life after life with Lord Nityananda as my teacher. Okay. So basing everything on Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very simple. Where do we start? So this verse also, it's a Prabhupada quotes this verse many times. Very nice verse, very important. But also in terms of Jayananda, I'll mention it. I got a book, maybe from Buddhimanta at the University of California in Davis, maybe about 1972 or something, 73. And I started reading it. It was Krishna book, the big one, volume 2. And I read it for about 1 year, very seriously, and was having so many amazing experiences with the book. Then I understood there's, temple in San Francisco. So I started visiting the temple. And of course, that was very, very strange, visiting an ISKCON temple in 1972, or whatever. So, but I had this association with Prabhupada by reading his book, right? And so then I was able to understand the temple and the activities without becoming too confused. So then, I moved in. I became a devotee, and then we moved to temple. I think it was 1975. We moved from San Francisco, from this very strange place, to the big building over in Berkeley. It was 6 city lots. It was an old Mormon temple, very gigantic project. And everything was a big chaos, a big mess. We were moving. The communist students were putting banners across the street, Hare Krishnas, go home. So many things, And Jayananda was there, and I was, trying to help manage everything in the middle of all this chaos. And then it was also Rath Yatra at the same time. So Srila Prabhupada came. It was the only Rath Yatra in the United States, was in San Francisco at that time. So we were organizing all these things at the same time. It's really a miracle. So I was in the kitchen because I would do I guess it was Shringar Arti offering. And it was halava, soaked garbanzo beans, okay, and little fruit and hot milk, So I was in the kitchen in the temple in Berkeley, and Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasana in the temple room, very big place, and it was full of devotees, hundreds of devotees all come to see Prabhupada. And after the Rath Yatra, Prabhupada was going to give sannyas to a devotee named Guru Das. And Guru Das was a very big guy. He was, part of the whole civil rights movement, United States. And they were taking black people from up and white people from up in the north and going down into these areas in Mississippi, Louisiana, places like that, and then marching for equal rights and all these things for Black people. And some of them were being killed. Many times they would have the dogs attack them and so many things. So he was a part of that whole movement, Guru Das, and he was going to take sannyas, you know. And so Prabhupada gave this lecture. It may have been right after the Ratha Yatra or before, but it was related. Actually, it was related. I guess it was right afterwards because it was especially he was talking about this in terms of taking sannyas, and how by doing this we give up all of our comfortable home and all these things, and then we're doing this to help other people. So he's quoting this verse like that. Actually, I'll tell you one story that Jayananda told me, fits in today. And in San Francisco Bay Area, there's, San Francisco, other side of the bay is Berkeley. And then right below Berkeley is Oakland, California. And Oakland, California, very, very strong Black population at that time. And this was, so when this happened, Guru Das was in the San Francisco temple. And I think he was dressed like in saffron clothing. He was there with one brahmachari. It was a big, heavy, civil rights movement in the Oakland auditorium, maybe like, 1,000, 2,000, all Black people. And it was really, really like militant, and somebody would get up and he would say, my granddaddy, he was a slave and, he was the African guy and the white slave people. And they caught him, but before they couldn't drag him on the boat, but he killed 3 of them before he got him on the boat. And is that Black enough for you, brothers and sisters? And all the Black people in the audience would say, yeah. And somebody else would get up and talk about how his ancestor had fought everybody on the boat and killed the slave master in Mississippi. And is that Black enough for you, brothers and sisters? Yeah. So it was very, very, strong militant meeting. It was going on like this. And Jayananda told me the only white people in the entire audience, was Guru Das and one brahmachari, So finally, the guy was organizing, and he kind of turned to Guru Das and this brahmachari, both white, and he said, "And what are you white boys here for? To tell us about God?" Okay. So Jayananda said, Guru Das stood up in front of 2,000 militant Black people and said, "We worship a Black God with a white girlfriend. Is that Black enough for you?" And he said it was like they kind of like this kind of disappeared. The organizer was going like, "Black God, white girlfriend." Wow. Okay. It was just beyond their limits. So that was Guru Das anyway, and he was going to take sannyas, And so Prabhupada had the morning class on this verse, and in general, it's a very nice verse for remembering. Tatikshava karunika suhrada sarvadehinam ajata shatava shanta sadhava sadhubhushana. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. So today we're engaging in Jayananda Das recollections and reflections by us, Hamutpreaksha Swami, the mercy of the Parthsarthi Association. And here's a nice picture. I don't use Macintosh, and so I was trying to make a PowerPoint show, and I discovered that this is called Keynote on Macintosh, and it works about 35% different than PowerPoint, maybe 40%. So as I was doing this, I had to be tatikshava. I had to be tolerant. I had to be merciful. Such a problem. And I can actually spell recollections, but this is a symptom of how difficult this was. Then I had to load this picture, and I couldn't edit it, but it's a little bit gray. But this is Jayananda, and you can see how he was a big person. He was James Kaur was his secular name, and he was very, very, bigger guy. You can see walking with Prabhupada. And this may have been in Golden Gate Park in the wintertime, because the temple was right next to the park, the street, where was that? Frederick Street. He went right beside the park, and you come out of the Frederick Street Temple, which was a very simple place, very interesting place, and turn left and go around the corner, and you were right into the park. And Prabhupada loved it. He said it should be the temple for the Bay Area. And this is a beautiful park. It's maybe like 20 blocks by 4 blocks wide, with so many different little, ponds and places, and horse riding places, where you can have your own horse there, horse trails, people with little sailing boats they put in the waters, and so many very nice things. So sometimes Prabhupada was there. He would tell Jayananda, time to take your dog for a walk. So they had such a, and they would go walking alone. And Prabhupada was very satisfied just going and walking with Jayananda and talking to him and everything else like that and so on. So this is a picture. He's a very much bigger person, a little bit older than the other devotees. He'd actually graduated from, I forgot where, Minnesota or something like that, Wisconsin, someplace in the Midwest. I think his uncle was like some kind of Baptist minister or something, and he came from the Midwest, which was much more ethical, moral place in many ways. And so he graduated from as a mechanical engineer, a very big guy, and so he had some skill, and he could have had a good career, but he was faced with a problem that many people are faced with: a tato brahma jijnasa. Now is the time to understand in the human form of life who we are. So he said he just didn't feel satisfied with just getting married, having a career, having children, politics in the town or whatever it was. So then he heard about the hippie movement in San Francisco. So he thought, okay, let me go out there. And he got a job driving a taxi cab, just to make some money. And he said that the night before he met Prabhupada, because he was investigating different things that were happening, like all of us, he said he was even crying a little bit because he was so unhappy. Who am I? Life has to have some meaning to it. So the next day he went to the temple on Frederick Street there, and there was some devotee there. He said, "Oh, you can talk to Swamiji." So he took Jayananda up to Prabhupada's room, and he says the brahmachari knocked on the door and said, "Swamiji, there's somebody here who wants to know about Krishna consciousness." So Prabhupada said, "Oh, yes, come in." And Jayananda said, as soon as he came in, Prabhupada looked at him, and he told the brahmachari, "Bring prasadam," like that. And so Jayananda told us that Prabhupada always knew what you needed. Prabhupada always knew what you needed. So as soon as he saw Jayananda, he said, "Bring prasadam." So Jayananda, a very big guy, hardworking guy. So he was, Prabhupada, I think, gave him a chair, and they had a little plate there. He was taking prasadam, and and Prabhupada was talking to him, and said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I drive a taxi." And Prabhupada said, "Oh, you have a job?" Because nobody else had jobs, and they're all hippies, So he was, "My God, you're a responsible person." Then he said, Prabhupada asked him while he was taking prasadam, "Do you have any questions?" And Jayananda said, "Well, yeah, what is the purpose of life?" And he said, Prabhupada thought for a second and said, "The purpose of life is to be happy." Okay, that was very simple. All the great philosophers, everything Jayananda had been looking for, he gave perfect. Okay, purpose of life is to be happy. So the next question is obvious: how to be happy. So once you come in contact with the sadhu like Prabhupada, everything becomes so simple, so clear. So then after that, of course, it's what is happiness? How to be happy? It's simple, but it's also a very big thing. Okay, you're not the body. You should engage in devotional service to God. Well, who is God? What is devotion? So it's a lot of discussions. And so Jayananda, I think he at some point he became temple president. He was doing so many things involved with Prabhupada there like that. But he's in so many ways he's manifests these qualities. I'm now going to try and go to the next slide here. Didn't work. Okay, I'll try something else. It did it. Okay. So here's Prabhupada's purport. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Srila Prabhupada said when he was in London, he said, I'm working so hard in my old age so that after I'm gone, you can discuss these purports and become happy. So Prabhupada says, a sadhu, as described above, is a devotee of the Lord. His concern, therefore, is to enlighten people in devotional service to the Lord. That is his mercy. He knows that without devotional service to the Lord, human life is spoiled. A devotee travels all over the country from door to door, preaching, be Krishna conscious, be a devotee of Lord Krishna. Don't spoil your life in simply fulfilling your animal propensities. Human life is meant for self-realization or Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So when Prabhupada was in San Francisco, of course, Jayananda made this Rath Yatra, we'll discuss it more, his life and soul. Prabhupada wanted this, he could do it, he was an engineer. So it was, in the beginning, maybe, I don't know, maybe for like 5 years, 3 years, maybe 4 years, the only Rath Yatra was in San Francisco, and the next one I think was in New York, and they added Los Angeles, I think, after that. And now every year we have, I don't know how many Rath Yatras does ISKCON sponsor every year, 100, 200, so many ISKCON Rath Yatras every year. Yeah. Then it was the only one. Okay, so they were starting at the edge of Golden Gate Park, go through the park. And there was, several hundred devotees and people, guests there. And Prabhupada was in the back of the Rath Yatra cart. And there was maybe two television stations with their cameras there and reporters. And Prabhupada gave a little speech. And he said, so, all you people of San Francisco, join the devotees once a year in this festival, chanting an emotional love of God, and your entire city will become Vaikuntha, like that. And Prabhupada said it already was a spiritual city because of the name, San Francisco, Saint Francis. A very wonderful place, wonderful place. So this was it. Prabhupada was traveling all over the world, trying to enlighten people to join the devotees, become a devotee. And Prabhupada says, these are the preachings of a sadhu. He is not satisfied with his own liberation. He always thinks about others. He is the most compassionate, Tikshiva Karunika, personality towards all fallen souls. Therefore, one of his qualities is Karunika, great mercy to the fallen souls. While engaged in preaching work, he has to meet with so many opposing elements. And therefore, the sadhu or devotee of the Lord has to be very tolerant, to Tikshiva. Someone may ill-treat him because the conditioned souls are not prepared to receive the transcendental knowledge of devotional service. They do not like it. That is their disease. The sadhu has the thankless task of impressing upon them the importance of devotional service. Sometimes devotees are personally attacked with violence. Lord Jesus Christ was crucified. Haridas Thakur was caned in 21 marketplaces. And Lord Chaitanya's principal associate, Nityananda, was violently attacked by Jagai and Madai. But still, they were tolerant because their mission was to deliver the fallen souls. One of the qualifications of a sadhu is that he is very tolerant to Tikshiva and merciful to the fallen souls, Karunika. He is merciful because he is a well-wisher of all living entities. He is not only a well-wisher of human society, but a well-wisher of animal society as well. It is said here, Sarva Dehinam, Sarvi Dehi, which means indicates all living entities who have accepted material bodies. Not only does a human being have a material body, but other living entities such as cats and dogs also have material bodies. I'm gonna try and I can't see my cursor. Okay, this is exciting because I can't see the cursor now, and I can't read the next one. Okay, the devotee of the Lord is merciful to everyone, cats, dogs, trees, etc. all living entities in such a way that they can ultimately get salvation from this material entanglement. Yeah. Shivananda Sena, one of the disciples of Lord Chaitanya, gave liberation to a dog by treating the dog transcendentally. Yeah. I'm trying to think, I can't remember any activities of Jayananda, especially with animals, but everything we're talking about, he very much was very, very much exemplified that. Um, I remember one time, because a lot of the income from the temple was coming from selling incense. In Los Angeles, they had Spiritual Sky, and it became very successful. So Jayananda would go off all the way out to Salt Lake City, and we had all of our San Francisco area. He'd be gone for maybe like about 2 weeks, and just visiting all the different places that were selling our Spiritual Sky incense, all by himself, driving, and come back. It's a big austerity, and they're making so much money to maintain the temple. And I remember there was a phone down in the office downstairs, our temple, 455 Valencia Street, and another one up in the treasury office, because I was a treasurer. So one time our temple president, Bhaktadas, he was up there with Jayananda, and there was one head shop where they were selling all this drug paraphernalia and hippie stuff and posters and all this kind of stuff. And they've been giving them incense. So they owed us something like maybe like $400 or something, fair amount of money. They just weren't paying. They wanted more incense. So Bhaktadas had not been able to collect this, and finally he asked Jayananda to call them. He was a representative. So they called him, and this black lady got on, and she was kind of hungover or something. And Jayananda started asking her for the money and everything else. And she started saying, harsh things and you greedy people, and even bad words and stuff, And so Jayananda was kind of tolerating it, and exactly this. He didn't take any offense. He tolerated it, and he went on. And finally, she became a little peaceful. And my goodness, these people are human beings, and they are also people like me. So finally, she agreed to pay half the money if they give her some more incense. Okay, so they didn't give her, so we had a little more income than we give expense. But the whole thing was over. Jayananda hung up, and they kind of laughed and smiled and said, "Well, I guess she got out of her bed on the wrong side this morning." So like that, he just many times. Another time we were out on North Beach, which is a really big tourist area in San Francisco, but it's extremely low class. They had all these like very, very bars and, women dancing, very, very tough area, And on New Year's Eve, it was unbelievable. So many thousands of people were there, and the police were out there to control it because it was all kinds of drunken people and prostitutes and everybody, And the police were there with even with horses, So anyway, we were out there trying to sell books in this big crowd. And we were passing out flowers, and Jayananda gave a flower to a person. He just broke the flower in half and threw it at him. And I saw him, and I was talking to him, and Jayananda said, "Yeah, everybody's got a little something to give to Krishna, even if it's some of their anger, So he was taking this person, throwing a flower at him, and hurling, vile utterances at him as that's what the person has to give to Krishna. Okay, he's doing something. He could just ignore me." So Jayananda was like this. He was this Titikshava Karunika, and these people were maybe even lower than animals. Yeah. Okay. There are many instances where a dog got salvation by the association with a sadhu, because a sadhu engages in the highest philanthropic activities for the benediction of all living entities. Yet, although a sadhu is not inimical towards anyone, the world is so ungrateful that even a sadhu has many enemies. Okay, let's go on next slide here. What is the difference between an enemy and a friend, Prabhupada says? It is the difference in behavior. A sadhu behaves well with everybody for the ultimate relief from material entanglement. Therefore, no one can be more friendly than a sadhu in relieving a conditioned soul. A sadhu is calm, Titikshava Karunika Suhridam Sarvadehinam Shantava. He is calm, and he is quietly and peacefully following the principles of Scripture. Okay. So again, this is also very manifest in the character of Jayananda. You know, it's yeah. For example, we're getting up in the morning. We're all living in the temple there. It was very tough. People didn't know what to do or anything else. I mean, the oldest sadhus were maybe like 20, 25 years old or something, and before they'd been hippies and everything else. And when I joined, the temple president had brahmachari and left with his girlfriend. And so Bhaktidas was our new president, and he'd been there like, maybe like 2-3 months when I started coming to the temple or joined the temple, moved in. It's a very difficult situation, so many things. But we were getting up in the morning. Prabhupada was very strict about some things. He had Mangalarti. And sometimes Jayananda was not there in Mangalarti, And so you wonder, wow, somebody might think, oh, he's, not very advanced in following the principles of the Scripture. But no, because he would go out in the morning to the produce market. Okay. And San Francisco is one of the biggest tourist areas in the world, so many hotels like that. And so because of that, the produce market was enormous. It was like maybe like, I don't know, maybe 3 entire blocks wide by 5 blocks long with just, bananas, vegetables, everything, flowers, So anyway, when Jayananda would take a couple of the new bhaktas, come with me, let's go, he'd get him in his old truck. He had a very big red truck, cube van, old thing, big, you could stand up in it. It was falling apart. So he would drive off to the produce market very early in the morning. That's when they did their work. But he would sing the entire Gurvastakam and had these new devotees. He'd have them with him reading it and stuff and so on. And when he got there, he would engage in all this negotiation with these people and these rough guys and then bring everything back and then put it all away. And you'd get good donations for everything because, they would get a tax write-off because they donated it to a church. And the stuff they were giving us, we could use it. It was good maybe for 1 or 2 days, but the restaurants and stuff were a little close. So it was very, very good for everybody, So he would go all over the place. He knew people. He would take prasadam, for people. Then after he came back, he put it all away in the walk-in refrigerator, everything else like that. Then he would come into the treasury office, and my morning petty cash would be finished. He would say, Hanuman, let's read Prabhupada's books together, So we sit down on the floor and he picks something, we read it and I'd read it and we discuss the content, So after some time I realized that everything was there. He had, kirtan in the morning, he had the Gurvastakam, he had, what he's saying, his rounds were done before he left, even before Mangalarti. He would get up and chant his rounds. And so then we would, and afterwards we have a class together, So this is Raganuga, Raganuga. He didn't have to follow the rules and regulations of the Scripture, externally, because he was naturally attached to hearing Prabhupada, having a class every morning, having a kirtan, all these things and so on. But he did it very peacefully. You didn't like notice any big show or anything. He was peacefully following everything. And it was very difficult to notice he was like such an advanced devotee. Other people like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, as soon as Tamal Krishna Maharaj came in the room, you knew he was an advanced devotee. Everybody would stand up and, very formal, Okay, yes, good. He was a general. With Jayananda, you didn't know who he was. You could commit offenses. You wouldn't know, so many things, So everybody had different qualities. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Jayananda, Satsvarup Maharaj, different, very spectacular qualities, like that. So we'll go ahead here. It's okay. A sadhu means one who follows the principles of Scripture at the same time as a devotee of the Lord. Okay. One who actually follows the principles of Scripture must be a devotee of God, because all the Shastras instruct us to obey the orders of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, a sadhu means a follower of the scriptural injunctions and a devotee of the Lord. All these characteristics are prominent in a devotee. A devotee develops all good qualities of the demigods. Okay. So Prabhupada is paraphrasing a verse here. Once you begin to know Prabhupada's books, you realize so many times what he's saying is just he's paraphrasing him here. So I'll ask Hari Lila, what is the verse that Prabhupada is paraphrasing here? A devotee develops all the good qualities of the demigods. It's 5:18:12. If I can remember the first line. Yeah. How's it go? Harava Bhaktas Kuto Mahagunan Matore Mano Ratenasati Davato Bahi. Yeah, that's the second part of it. Okay. Yeah. Siddhupadeshamrita. Okay. Anyway, Harley was looking it up now. Yeah. So it's nice. You see Prabhupada quoting these things, you can cite them. Even though academically qualified, has no actual good qualifications according to the standard of transcendental realization.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarve gunastatra samasate suraha harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathena sati dhavato
Okay. The first word is yasya.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Yasya hi bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarvaya gunastatra samasate suraha. These memories, these verses are stored as holograms. Yeah. If you can pick up any part of it and remember that, that will stimulate the entire thing. You don't have to always get it as a a line like that. So yasya
asti
yasya
yasyasti bhakti
yasya hi
yasyasti bhakti.
Oh, Yasyasti bhakti or bhagavatira kenchana sarvai gunastatra samasate sura harahava bhaktasya kuto mahagunan manoratenasati dahrato bahi. Yasyasti bhakti or bhagavatira. So as we refresh them, otherwise they'll go away. So it's very, very nice to stop and refresh these things. And they're very, very powerful when you're preaching. You can see when you're quoting the Shastra, it has special potency. Okay. So this is what it says right there. Very, very famous verse. This is Prahlad Maharaj. It's describing Prahlad Maharaj. It's Prahlad Maharaj praying to Lord Nrsingadev in the 5th canto, 5:18:12. It's very easy for we Americans to remember because there was the War of 1812. Okay, 5:18:12. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatira kenchana sarvai gunastatra samasate sura rava bhaktasya kuto mahagunad manovratena si davato bahihi. And learn the word by word everything, Okay. So this is Prabhupada saying that if being a devotee and following the scriptural injunctions, they're so related. Because really, even if you're following externally, you're not a devotee. There's no good qualities. We used to go out to Harinam Sankirtan in Berkeley on the Telegraph Avenue, and many crazy people there. And we had to be careful they didn't stomp on the harmonium or something. Watching everybody and crazy street people. And sometimes we would go over to Santa Cruz on the coast, about an hour and away. And there everybody was very high class and rich and, and very, very, very peaceful. And the children would distribute Back to Godhead magazines and ask for a quarter. And everybody would give a quarter and be very nice and so on, But I noticed as soon as you started talking seriously about four regulative principles and things like this, and the horns came right out. Superficially because of the mano ratenasati, they were on the chariot of the mind, and the mind was in the mode of goodness, so they were good. But at heart, it was different. Some of them at heart were good people. The exact opposite in Berkeley, some people externally were tough, rough, but at heart they were good people. So a devotee, because they change of heart, then they begin to manifest all these qualities externally, and they're not just superficial, they really are compassionate, not just because it makes me feel good. So it's a very, very nice purport, nice verse about Jayananda. And then we have maybe a couple more things here we can mention because we could go on for several weeks about this. Okay, so I would have liked to, I took about an hour to do this on this PowerPoint show with 3 slides. I can do much better PowerPoint shows, but I was struggling here. So anyway, came up with 5 topics to talk about. Why not? Okay. First was my meeting with Jayananda. Okay. Then his humility, then his relationship with Srila Prabhupada, Ratha Yatra, and his Swarup. And of course, some of these we've already covered. Again, the first time I met Jayananda, I mentioned I was coming to the temple in San Francisco and visiting and going away. And it was very different, reading the book and the Krishna book and everything else, and then associating with these neophyte devotees and everything else, So they had a lunch program. So one day I came, remember I was there for the lunch program, and this guy sat down next to me, big guy, and he had a old clothes on and torn pants, and he was using a rope for a belt. And he said, "Hey, my name is Jayananda. What's your name?" Taking prasadam. I said, "Oh, I'm Huber. I'm from Sacramento." And he said, "Oh, that's a really nice place." He said, "We're having this big festival," and he said he had to show me a really beautiful poster that he designed of Rath Yatra. And he said, "Usually I go to Sacramento and there's so many different vegetarian places and that kind of stuff. And they take a few posters, set them up, And so, but I can't get up there. So could you take a few posters and distribute them?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So he gave me about 50 posters or something and a big list. He had it all ready. So it was so common with Jayananda, so common. He would engage anybody in devotional service. And wow, it was a challenge. My gosh, I had to go all these strange places and represent the Hare Krishna movement. I barely knew who they were. A new devotee, But yeah, Jayananda's association, moments I felt, wow, I can do this. I'll give you another example of this. People meeting Jayananda. Maybe about 4 blocks, maybe less than that, maybe 3 blocks from the temple. One devotee was living there, and coming to the temple. In a very rough area. This was the Mission District. There were dead rats in the street and stuff. It was a tough area, in San Francisco. And the temple was there. So one devotee was living in some place, and it was maybe like old apartment house. I mean, it seems like it was maybe 3 stories, old wooden place. Maybe 3 apartments in the back and 3 in the front. A little courtyard in the middle. And he said that his manager, the owner, said that we could take all the apples from this apple tree. There's a nice apple tree in the middle there, and we could take them. So with Jayananda, we maybe four brahmacharis. We went over there with some boxes and started picking apples. And then the manager's son came down. Maybe he was like 12 years old. And started, "Well, who are you?" And Jayananda started talking about things and telling very interesting stories from India and so help us here. And we can't do this. Can you climb up there? And he helped the kid climb up in the tree. And the kid felt, very useful. I can do this. Okay. So we got all these big boxes of apples, maybe like 4 boxes or something, put them in the truck. And then he told the kid, "We're going back to our temple. It's right near here, this and that." And then the kid asked if he could go with us. And Jayananda said, "Well, but you got to ask your father." And he said, "Oh, yeah." So the father came down and talked to Jayananda a little bit. Okay, Jayananda impressed him as, being sane guy. He said, "Okay, go with this guy, but stay with this guy, Jay, here." So the boy went there with us. Maybe 2 of them, I think, his brother, And then they were, Jayananda got him in the kitchen, washing apples and cutting them and talking all about Krishna. It was Sunday feast. And then they were supposed to go home, but they called their father and asked they could stay a little bit later. Then he talked to Jayananda some more. I said, "Okay, So then everything was offered. They went to the kirtan, they had prasad, and Jayananda took them home. The entire day they've been with devotees and every first time, and they were just like, ecstatic, for the rest of their life, they would remember that. There's no doubt about it. And he met the father and stuff, So it's so many examples of Jayananda when he met people for the first time. That was it. Another time our walk-in refrigerator broke down and these 2 Mexican guys came to fix the whole thing. And Jayananda was a mechanical engineer, So right away he could talk to them about what's going on, everything else, And then he started talking about what we were doing, we're church and everything else. And they wanted something like in modern language, like, $200 for the work they'd done and replace some small thing. Then Jayananda was preaching to them, and they're Mexicans, pious and stuff. And so finally he said, "Can you help out and give a donation for the church and stuff like that?" And I said, "Well, we can give you our fees, our labor, but we got to charge you for this and that." And the boss and saying, "Well, can you tell something to the boss?" "Yeah, we can work it out." So in the end, they took something like $50 instead of 250. And of course, they walked away with just these plates of prasadam and everything else, And I'll give you one more story. Jayananda, we were building the Rath Yatra cart, and next to the temple in San Francisco, 455 Valencia Street, it had been a mortuary, before it was a temple. Okay. And on the second story in the back, where we cut up all the subji and everything else, the floor kind of tilted down to a drain. And that's where they used to drain the blood out of the bodies. And they had ghosts. I mean, we all experienced the ghosts there, But next to that was an industrial garage. It was big enough for two full buses to go inside of that thing. And we had that thing. It was like incredible. So Jayananda was making these wheels for the Rath Yatra cart. He wanted to make them out of iron, because it kept breaking. And so he had one Mexican guy, Ricardo, helping him. He was a professional welder. He was paying him. So one Friday night, I think it was, I was out there with Jayananda and one brahmachari, and we were working on this prasadam cart and trying to weld the sides up. And Ricardo came in about maybe like, 6 o'clock or something. And he was all dressed up and had his hair, nicely oiled and smelled really good. You could tell he was all ready to go off and, go to some clubs and And Jayananda said, "Oh, Ricardo, good to see you. Yeah, you come for your money, right?" He said, "Yeah." So Jayananda said, "Yeah, no problem. I got it right with me. Hey, let me ask you one question. I'm trying to do this weld and I don't know how to do it. Can you show me how to do it? I'm not a professional like you." And Ricardo said, "Yeah, you got to clip it like this and that." And you're like, "No, you got to." And within a few minutes, his jacket was off, and this is completely true. And then by 9 o'clock at night, 3 hours later, Jayananda said, "Oh, Ricardo, I forgot to give you your money. You've spent this entire time with us. I ruined your night. And Ricardo said, "No, it's okay. This was so much more fun. And if I got the money, I would have gone and spent it and come home drunk. And my mother would have been, angry at me. Now I'll go home and now I'll go off, spend maybe half an hour and go home. And my mother will be happy with me. And okay, And sometimes we were tired and Jayananda would just say something, "Wow, this festival tomorrow." He would just automatically make you think of Krishna somehow or other. So with him, automatically, so many people, just automatically. So my first meeting with Jayananda, okay, everybody here, you meet with Jayananda. And he could penetrate into your heart, understand what was your nature, what was your activity and stuff. Humility, okay. Everybody said that Satsvarup Maharaj's quality, he's kind of like Lord Brahma. Satsvarup Maharaj is kind of like an incarnation of Lord Brahma. Tamal Krishna Maharaj is kind of like an incarnation of Maharaj Prithu, right? Ability to control the people. But everybody said Jayananda's foremost quality was humility. It was. He was just humble. He left his body because he got leukemia. It's very interesting because everybody kind of comments that just like Haridas Thakur didn't want to see Lord Chaitanya disappear. So Jayananda left his body right before Prabhupada, and so many senior devotees all commenting, probably he's going ahead of Prabhupada to set things up, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, as we heard, if there's anybody in this movement who's an eternal associate of Prabhupada, it's probably Jayananda. I would like him. But it was, again, humility. It was just, you couldn't distinguish him as being anybody special. You felt like he was, we were using caramels, these little wrapped up caramels and cellophane, sweets, And so we buying big bags of them and going out and distributing and collecting money on the street. And all the brahmacharis were just couldn't control themselves. They were eating them, So Jayananda came into the treasury room and he said, "Hanuman, they have all these big bags of caramels in my room there, And he said, I'm looking at them, I'm chanting, and I think, well, I'll just take one, It's the first thing I know, there's a whole pile of papers in front of me, and I'm just struggling to control myself and just, try my best, not to eat them. And so he said that, and it was like, you felt, my goodness, so if Jayananda is struggling with this, what to speak of us? Okay, so we can do like that. We can try our best, Okay, So he always personified, the lowest consciousness. Everybody felt like, I can act like him. I can try and do things like him. He's not like some big superior guy like Tamal Krishna Maharaj is so great, and how can I, Okay. He said an example of a common person. I'll give one more example. Okay. Anyway, so Jai, let's kind of speed up here. We shouldn't go on too long. After Mangalartik, Bhaktadas, if we came to Mangalartik and heard the Krishna book, he would distribute the Mangalartik sweets to everybody a little bit as you came. So we came out in the lobby, and there was some, some rasagulas, some sweet rice, take a little bit. And so I was with Jayananda, devotees were standing around, and taking prasadam, and a little bit of sweet rice fell on the floor. It was his or mine. And we were both going to go down, because what you did then is you'd wipe it up, with your fingers and lick your fingers. It was transcendental. So I was going to go down and wipe it up, and Jayananda was going to go down and wipe it up. And my mind said, okay, hey, I'm going to be more humble than Jayananda. Because whatever, any unpleasant service, he would always, I'll take care of it, don't worry, So my mind said, okay, I'm going to be more humble than Jayananda. I'll be quicker than him. So I raced down to try and wipe it up, and Jayananda did it. And he beat me. He was faster than me, and then he kind of wiped it up, and he was licking his fingers, and he said, oh, this is too degraded. This is too degraded a service for someone like you, So when I was doing that, it was like it was a little tension. It was pressure, this competition. And my mind started becoming a little bit angry, because my mind liked to be known as being very humble, right? We want to be humble because everybody appreciates us, But when you start putting the pressure on, our humility is not very deep. It's like really, really like, So in that tense moment, I could see that my mind was becoming a little bit angry, And then Jayananda was saying, oh, this, and so it was very intimate. I could actually see his consciousness and my consciousness. And it was like right in front of me, this hole opened up in the floor with no bottom. And that's what it was like, And I was, for one moment, I was seeing how humble, Jayananda was. And it was just like, there was a hole in the floor with no limit. And mine was just like about maybe 2 inches deep, my humility. So that's the last time I ever tried to be more humble than Jayananda. That's it. So many stories that can go on. Relationship with Srila Prabhupada. We already discussed that. Like, Prabhupada would say, take your dog for a walk. One very famous story is Prabhupada came for the Ratha Yatra in San Francisco. And they had a little apartment the Grihastas were using. And the room was a very kind of a small living room. But Prabhupada arrived, and then they were having a little bit of an Istagosti. It was packed full of devotees, And then after maybe about 30 minutes, Jayananda came in. Okay, and he was coming straight from the Ratha Yatra carts and working on them. And he had his work clothes on with grease, and everybody else was all cleaned up with tilak on. So Jayananda kind of came in and just, sat very humbly kind of to one side. And immediately Prabhupada said, oh, let him sit down, let him sit down. So Jayananda sat down and paid his obeisance to Prabhupada and everybody and was just listening. And after about 10 minutes, he fell asleep, and he started snoring right in the middle. Everybody was so shocked and kind of nudging him to wake up. And Prabhupada said, no, let him sleep, like that. So that was his relationship with Prabhupada was very intimate. At the same time too, Prabhupada would chastise him about things like that. But he would always take it as the greatest pleasure. He was afraid. One time the garlands weren't correct, and he and Bhaktidas hid because Prabhupada was looking for them to chastise them for the garlands weren't present. They were both hiding out, But always, so many times, he would say, "Well, Prabhupada would like this." He was very Prabhupada conscious. For him, Prabhupada and Krishna were so similar, like that, connected. And also through him, we could see Prabhupada. For example, in the Frederick Street Temple, it was very small, and the original Jagannath deities were there, very big, good size, and they were up on a little bit of above the devotees, and people they were taking prasadam, it was a Sunday feast, and all packed together. And he said somebody asked Prabhupada, he told me this, what does Lord Jagannath look like when you're self-realized? And so it was like, he just looked over at Lord Jagannath, like I'm looking at Hari Leela. He has a black wristwatch on his right arm. He's scratching his left shoulder right now. He looked at his wristwatch. Now he's smiling. Now he has a yogi pants and he's sitting on. It was exactly like that. Jayananda Prabhupada looked over. Jayananda said at Jagannath, and he said, "Oh, you'll see a prince at Kurukshetra with elephants and warriors and queens." So nobody else could see that. But Prabhupada, it was like he was just describing what he was seeing. So through him, he was a transparent via media to Prabhupada. I didn't have much physical association with Prabhupada because I joined so late, and also my situation. But through Jayananda, Hansaduda, and Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, I had a lot. So same way, we associate with other devotees, and we know those devotees. We get to know them well. And so when Jayananda would say something about Prabhupada, I knew I knew him, so I knew how he was seeing Prabhupada. Hansadutta had a different perspective, had a different relationship, and he was very aggressive. Jayananda was, was hardworking and, more like Shudra attitude. But Jayananda was a general, so on. Okay. In the Rath Yatra, of course, we discussed that. He made that his central project. Prabhupada wants this, I can do this. As an engineer, he constructed the carts. He used so many different techniques and tricks and stuff to do it. Yeah. He would go out at night. I can describe this now. He passed the statute of limitations. In many places are construction yards, and then they had the things they're using for construction, right? Extra things are stacked up there to be removed later on. So he would go around at night and pick up wood and metal and all this kind of stuff in these construction sites. And sometimes things that were not obviously for being thrown away, a few of those would also disappear. not bad, One time his pants wore out completely, and so he stole a pair of Levi's from store and they caught him and he had to go to court. The story is, and he's in there, and different people, there's a judge and a prosecuting attorney, So came up James Core, different people. And he came up and said, Mr. Core, you've been charged with stealing his pants, and stuff. Then Jayananda was very humble. He said, yeah, I knew it was wrong, but I work for this mission, and we're trying to help people. We're feeding people, doing all these kind of things. And I just felt so bad, asking him, it's the truth, asking them for money to buy pants for myself. But mine actually, they have a little hole in them, so on like that. And he touched the judge's heart, the prosecuting attorney. And finally he said, well, yeah, okay, Mr. Kaur, but you can't do that kind of thing. You've really got to, God will send the money to your church, And Jayananda said, okay, thank you. I can understand that, So judge said, look, I got to charge you $25 fine for this, And Jayananda went to his pocket and he pulled out the $10, $12, So all I got with me is $12. And the judge said, I got $5. And the prosecuting attorney got $5, and they all paid it off. He said, okay, Mr. Corbett, next time if you need the money, come and ask me. I'm here in the shop. Don't go stealing any more pants, and God bless your religion. So another example is he was not an ordinary human being, okay. So Rath Yatra, he made it his life and soul. He finally finished off. He started the Rath Yatra in New York. And maybe because of all of this, he actually had leukemia coming, and then finally he got it in New York, got worse, and left his body before Prabhupada. One time he went 72 hours, 3 days without sleeping or eating to make the whole thing a success. He would go get the posters done. He would get the permits. The construction crew, he would go there and everything, get the permits, just 72 hours without sleeping or eating. The whole Rath Yatra was over. We were all dead. He would still have energy, put everything away, go around, get all the ladies to make cookies and cakes, and go to the park service and give them an entire cake, go to everybody. And everybody loved the festival because, they got prasadam, everything else. Then he sat down in front of Lord Jagannath, and chanted, 50 rounds without standing up. Straight, and sometimes you could see he was tears in his eyes sitting in front of Jagannath. Okay, so finally they finished off here at number 5, Swarup. So it is my speculation that Jayananda is an incarnation of Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah. Okay, it's okay. You can speculate like this. You take the symptoms, and then it's good. You have your thing. Prabhupada said, you'd be surprised if you knew who these people were in this movement. He was humble, like Prahlad Maharaj. Okay, yeah. Prahlad Maharaj incarnated as Haridas Thakur. Yeah, in the same way he was humility personified. Yeah, and he disappeared before Lord Chaitanya, just like Jayananda disappeared before. Yeah. And also you see that his Prahlad Maharaj. What's tomorrow?
Nothing.
Yeah, tomorrow is Nishingadev's appearance day, and Jayananda's disappearance day is celebrated the day before. Oh. So if you speculated something, if I speculated something like this in front of Jayananda, I did something like this one time. I saw him one time distributing, and people were kind of insulting, and I just walked up to him and I said, "You're not who you appear to be, are you?" And he kind of like smiled and like, kind of shrugged and, came back to the ordinary earth planet. So yeah, probably Jayananda would like kind of like the same way, yeah, catch him, yeah. But again, these are very, very, these are only things we become liberated. We begin to see that Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, they're directly dealing with this movement. This movement is, all the avatars pulled Prabhupada here. And he's sending people who are not ordinary and stuff. And so having Jayananda's association, everything else like that, So that's kind of our presentation for today. I guess any questions, comments, complaints, or donations? We're accepting bananas. That's a whole other story. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. It was such a wonderful, talking about Janand Prabhu. And I would like to apologize. I did not see the flyer, so I just said that you're going to talk about Narasimha Dev. But then I realized, Narasimha Dev, you're talking tomorrow. So it would be wonderful that we'll hear from you again tomorrow. Yes. And it was so wonderful to hear about all the pastime stories and how you spend times with devotees and Srila Prabhupada, and we haven't had a chance to associate, but we take our indirect association by hearing from such nice devotees like you. And so thank you very much, Prabhuji. It was very wonderful to hear from you. And I would request if any devotees have any question, Maharaj will take any questions or any comments or any, Anumodan, or anything about you want to say about the today's talk, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can unmute all them. Yes, devotees, if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask questions.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Rasikendra Das from Houston. It was a very nice recollection of Jayananda Prabhu's glories. Truly, truly very moving. Jayananda Prabhu is one of my heroes. But Maharaj, we find that in the early days of ISKCON, there was a lot of struggles. Devotees, the level of sacrifice and surrender was just inconceivable. For devotees who are joining nowadays, such level of surrender, such level of sacrifice, such level of total dedication. You don't see that because we come in typically well situated professionally, we do our sadhana and life goes on like this. So how do we kind of build appreciation for devotees like this, Maharaj? I think it's very, very helpful for us to really appreciate these devotees and see, and how do we emulate their examples, even though they've set very, very high goals, but how at least we could make progress towards those goals.
Well, and see, I heard your class the other day. It was very nice. Part of it is exactly what you're saying, is that we appreciate, not just devotees that, in the beginning of ISKCON, but in the middle of ISKCON and in the previous acharyas like Narottam Das Thakur. And that's what we do. We hear, that's why we have so many days of festival days and disappearance days of the acharyas. And they're there. They're setting an example for us, like Titikshava Karunika. And so that's the first thing, is exactly what you're saying. We hear these things. But another thing I would point out is that it is, in some ways, it's always the same. It's always the same. You're pointing out the level of austerity and everything else, but the problem may be, you're getting an echo. Harlila, can you turn the volume down a little bit? I'm getting, okay, thank you. Okay, yeah. But how many devotees stayed? Another point. So maybe devotees were fanatics and running around and going out and with no shoes on, dressed like brahmacharis and preaching and everything else. But it was it was a fanaticism to it. And so it was very intense, but in some ways it wasn't very, very deep. And so maybe they stayed. If you look at the number of people who stayed, my initiation letter from Prabhupada, there was Vatsala and Sashikal, and then Vatsala and Vaisheshika took second nation. Sat, Krit, Lanka, Vijaya. There were maybe like 4 more people took first initiation the same time I did. And I'm the only one left, as far as I know. One of them was killed was shot to death because he became a drug dealer. Yeah. As an example, his name was Jamie, and Prabhupada gave him initiation of a name of a woman, And then they said, no, he's a man. Okay. But before he'd been a devotee, he was named Jivadas. He was a criminal, but really tough criminal. He would like pull into a gas station off the freeway with his friend, and the guy would come out to put the gas in, and he would pull a shotgun out of the trunk and stick it in the guy's face and say, hey, this is a robbery. Give me all your money. This is a true story. And then at exactly that moment, a highway patrol car came off the freeway and pulled in to get gas. And he looked at the car and so he just tossed the gun to the guy giving the gas, and said, just joking, And the guy would laugh, was kind of nervous. Oh, thank you, sir. And put the gun down. And the highway patrol guys were looking at this and thinking, well, I guess it's okay, They got their gas and went out. And then Jiva then picked the shotgun up again and said, I'm not joking, it's a real gun, and robbed the guy. So the good old days, Prabhupada. Okay. So guess what he became? He became the Sankirtan leader. And he was at the mothers' parties, and oh God, it was unbelievable. He had there was 20 women and one man. And they were, so maybe Prabhupada gave him the name. Or Prabhupada, you made a mistake giving him a woman's name. But ended up, he was one man with 20 men and 20 women. This was going on all over ISKCON. And finally, it came out that he was eternally married to 5 of them, and he was skimming off about $1,500 a day. He was skimming off money. Yeah. The biggest collector, Mother Nada, she was collecting about $1,000 a day in 1975. Yeah, pushed us up to maybe like $3,000 or $5,000 a day. So yeah, that's what it was. Prabhupada was there. He could manage all these things personally. And when Prabhupada disappeared, it just kind of fell apart. He tried to reform himself. Hansadutta tried to reform himself, but in the end, he couldn't quite handle it. And the FBI was chasing devotees down to find out if they knew anything about him. And finally, after about 1 year, they found him dead, full of bullet holes in the back in the Sacramento River. So, hey, Baba, welcome to the good old days. Yeah, Prabhupada was there, and he could personally, physically manage stuff, but that also limited it, because he had to do it by letters, And now is another situation. People who are coming who may not do such big service right away, robbing banks, yeah, but they can go on for a longer basis, So it's a different world. It's always the same challenge. It's always new, So that's what I would say is that it was a different time, and yeah, take advantages of it and see how the young devotees did it, and don't follow the example. You don't imitate the example, but follow in their footsteps of taking whatever's going on now in this world and apply it and become a hero in your own way. Yeah. How's that?
Very nice, Maharaj. Very nice answer.
Is that black enough for you?
The challenges are always there, even in this time, those times. But yes. Prabhupada also called it the good old days.
Prabhupada didn't like that. Yeah. He said there are no good old days. He didn't like that. He said all the days are good. They're different, and stuff. And yeah, there is something very special when Prabhupada was manifest as an acharya, But well, I can go on here. Anyway, you said, but anybody else have any questions, comments? I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
So, Hare Krishna devotees, do we have any more questions?
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, how to develop genuine humility, like not just like, like a show bottle of humility, but genuine humility, like Jayananda Prabhu.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Like that. Yeah. By giving lectures and seeing your picture on Zoom. That will, in fact, yeah. Developing genuine humility. what Prabhupada is saying basically in the purport, by engaging in devotional service. That's the best way, But I say one very important thing is the definition of what is humility. And that again is what Jayananda was saying is, actually he was so humble. They wanted him to give lectures when he was leaving his body and stuff. He said, "Oh no, I'm not qualified." So finally they got him to give one lecture. I think it was in San Diego, Los Angeles, leaving his body. And he gave a definition of humility. And he said, humility does not mean being artificially small or artificially big. It's not that we, okay, Prabhu, I can't do anything. He said, humility means just being who you are, not being artificially big, but it also means not being artificially small. Humility means simply self-realization. Prabhupada said humility means following the four regulative principles. So our basic process, there's different things we can, for example, Prabhupada says there are transcendental though material tricks. Okay, this is Vaidhi Bhakti. So we can become humble by following the process given by an acharya. And he describes, get up, do this, associate, chant, hear, read books. Yeah, that will make you humble, And the more humble you are, the better you can do the process. So in the beginning, it's Vaidhi Bhakti. And okay, you're what was it? You're angry at somebody, you're envious of them. You don't want that. You want to have a humble relationship towards them. So Kirtanananda, I think quoting Prabhupada, said, okay, if you feel that way, but you can't control your mind, then try and see what is that devotee's service. She's cooking all the pakoras on Sunday. He's going to the produce market. And then help them. Okay, the devotee's coming back with a truck from the produce market, so much to unload. You say, Prabhu, can I help you with this? And he says, well, yeah, okay, And you'll see that it forces your mind because you're intimately associating with their service. And then you see, us devotee, how can I be envious of him? So it's one very, very good trick, And of course, anybody, we try and be humble in terms of karmis. And we say, okay, I'm using a water supply. This guy is a dirty karmi, but he's working for the water resources thing. And if he wasn't doing that, then I wouldn't have water, So in the beginning, we can just, Madhyamadakari can see who's God, who's a devotee, who's a demon, who are innocent people, and we distinguish, But Uttamadakari sees everybody as my guru, Trinadapi Sunichena Torori Vasa Hishnuna. And that's the goal. But in the beginning, we can't do that. So then we have friendship with devotees. We avoid the demons, and we preach to the innocent, and we worship Krishna. And automatically we'll go from being Madhyamadakari and humility to being Uttamadakari. So engage in devotional service, and then I gave you one trick. Yeah.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Smiling now, This really makes you humble. Any other questions? I'll give my Tamal Krishna Maharaj look now. I can't do it. Right. Yeah, Tamal Krishna Maharaj would terrify everybody, including me. Yeah. So, okay, want to thank everybody very much. That's enough. And then tomorrow, I guess we'll be back, same place, different time. And we can talk about Lord Nrsingadev. Thank you very much for giving us a chance to associate with devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. We'll all thank Maharaj with Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare
How do you stop this?
Maharaj.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.